Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to Bev Turner Today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Now, we have got a jam-packed show for you this Bank Holiday Monday. Rishi Sunak is under mounting pressure to get to grips with the crisis in the NHS as a senior medic warns hundreds of people are dying every week due to delays in emergency care. According to a new poll, even Conservative voters blame the government for the crisis. Let me know what you think. Then, these stats are in. 45,756 people crossed the English Channel last year alone. It was only a couple of weeks ago that the Prime Minister set out his 5-point plan to tackle the crisis. So we'll be asking, do you have any faith that the government will get to grips with the channel crossings in 2023? We'll be getting the thoughts of Anne Widdecombe and Lee Anderson MP later in the show, so stay tuned for that. And let's not forget the biggest news of the day. The Church of England now has its first non-binary priest. So we're going to be getting stuck into that. I'll also be introducing my panellists in just one moment. But let's first get the headlines.
Good morning. Thank you, Emily. It's 1 minute past 10. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Health bosses are calling for the government to declare a major incident within the NHS over mounting pressure on the system. The Society for Acute Medicine has called the current situation urgent, whilst NHS providers says the service is under equivalent levels of pressure as during the early stage of the COVID pandemic. It follows the Royal College of Emergency Medicine saying as many as 500 people could be dying each week because of delays to critical care. More than a dozen NHS trusts and ambulance services declared critical incidents over the festive period. Well, some people are resorting to DIY medicine when they can't see a GP face-to-face. A recent survey commissioned by the Lib Dems shows more than 1 in 4 adults have not been able to get an in-person appointment in the past 12 months. 16% of those who can't see a doctor have resorted to homemade medicine or asking someone not qualified to help. The former Director General of Border Force has called on the government to get far tougher with channel migrants. Tony Smith has told GB News the Home Secretary needs to introduce a detention and fast-track removal process to get a proper grip on the small boats crisis. It comes as a record number of migrants, almost 46,000, crossed the English Channel to the UK last year. The Prime Minister has promised to introduce laws ensuring those who enter the country illegally won't be allowed to stay. 2 men charged with the murder of footballer Cody Fisher in a nightclub on Boxing Day are due in court today. 21-year-old Cammy Carpenter and 22-year-old Remy Gordon will appear before Birmingham Magistrates Court. They've also been charged with a fray. 23-year-old Cody Fisher was killed on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub, which has had its licence suspended for 28 days since Friday. While Marvel actor Jeremy Renner is reportedly in a critical but stable condition following a weather-related incident. A spokesperson says the 51-year-old, well known for playing Hawkeye, was airlifted to hospital after the accident which occurred while he was ploughing snow. 2-time Oscar nominee is reportedly receiving excellent care. It comes as dozens of people have been killed across the US amid heavy winds and snow. 2 helicopters have collided mid-air in Australia's Gold Coast region, killing 4 people and critically injuring 3 more. Queensland Police have said emergency services attended the scene near the SeaWorld theme park after 2 aircrafts crash-landed after the collision. An investigation's been launched. Tens of thousands of people have gathered to celebrate as Inácio Lula da Silva was sworn in as Brazil's president for a 3rd time. The 77-year-old defeated far-right candidate Bolsonaro in October. Well, in his speech yesterday, Lula da Silva pledged to unite the country and govern for all Brazilians. Tens of thousands of people are expected to pay their respects in Rome as Pope Benedict is lying in state at the Vatican. The body will remain there for 3 days before the funeral on Thursday. Pope Benedict XVI became the first pontiff to resign in 600 years in 2013. He died on Saturday, aged 95. Now, the hearse carrying the coffin of Brazilian footballing legend Pelé has left Sao Paulo for the funeral in Santos. Fans started to gather last night near the Urbano Caldeira Stadium, Pelé's hometown club, for the mass 24-hour public wake. The 3-time World Cup winner died on Thursday at the age of 82 after battling colon cancer for just over a year. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Emily.
Thank you, Tatiana. So good morning and welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Here's what we've got coming up. Up to 500 people a week could be dying due to emergency care delays within the NHS, a top health official has warned. The head of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has also warned that A&E wait times this winter will reach new highs. So what's next for the NHS and for the Prime Minister? A record number of people crossed the channel in small boats last year, according to government figures. Over 45,000 migrants made the journey, with the final crossings taking place on Christmas Day. Will this number only increase heading into 2023? And I'll be joined by reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon to discuss the top stories of the day that matter to you most. And of course, this show is nothing without you and your views. Don't forget to vote in our poll on Twitter this morning. We are asking you, do you have confidence? Do you have faith that the government will get to grips with the Channel boat crossings in 2023? It looks highly unlikely to me. Some are suggesting that they could double in 2023 unless we, well, change. Email me on gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. Please do. Well, I think it's fair to say that the festive period is very much over for the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak is facing mounting pressure over the crisis in the NHS, ongoing strikes, and of course the small boats crisis too. A top health boss has warned that up to 500 people a week could be dying due to emergency care delays. The head of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine also warned that A&E wait times this winter will reach new highs, meaning disruption could continue for many, many months. As it's reported, one patient was forced to wait 99 hours before receiving a bed last week. To discuss the very many challenges facing the government, let's go to Nigel Nelson, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning on your bank holiday Monday. Now, if I were Rishi Sunak's advisor having to deliver him the papers this morning, I'd be a little bit worried.
Yeah, so would I. They don't make happy reading for the Prime Minister at all. And what he's going to do at the moment, he's got sort of three priorities. The first has got to be sorting out the strikes, which are set to paralyse us at the beginning of this year. Then he needs to try and tackle the cost of living crisis, which is obviously behind the strike action. And finally, which he says is a big priority, is to deal with immigration. So he's got a lot on his plate in 2023.
Yes, and of course, the terrible news over the weekend and again today in the papers is, of course, what's going on in the NHS. I mean, there have been so many horror stories. You've got senior medics calling for something to be done. It does seem like we're very much, we always say this every winter, the NHS is in crisis. So we have some perspective to give there. But it does seem like something is different now. People are saying it's worse than even at the height of the pandemic.
Yes, and I think that Adrian Boyle of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has really confirmed what we all suspected, that people are dying because the NHS is just not working. He puts the figure at up to 500. Now, I mean, quite clearly, you need to do something major with the NHS. It requires major reform. In the short term, you're talking about more money, more beds, more staff. And also getting on with actually building new hospitals that Boris Johnson promised 40 of them at the last election. And at the moment, work has only started on 7. Now, what we've got to do is that there is the short-term problem, and that is to try and sort out A&E, try and get people into hospital beds rather than waiting on trolleys. And then we've got to look at the long-term solution. What do you do about the NHS going forward? Because it's just not working at the moment.
Also, it's been commented upon over the weekend and throughout the festive period that Rishi Sunak has been, well, a bit missing in action. Do you think he's got the bottle to deal with all of these very many challenges? I mean, the Daily Mail, as you said at the start, really, Rishi's triple New Year headache, the strikes, the NHS, and of course the Channel migrants. Has he got the bottle? He seems to have been a little bit too absent.
Yes, and certainly if I was advising him, I'd say get out there. He's stopped putting ministers up for the morning round on TV and radio. That, I think, is a mistake. I think it's important that you have the government out there actually telling people what they're going to do about the various problems that we're facing. So the fact that he seems to have completely disappeared doesn't actually inspire confidence. Now, we're not expecting him to actually announce a new policy every 10 minutes. What I think that the voters expect is to see their Prime Minister out and about, getting on with the job. Now, he may well be working very hard behind the scenes, but I think he does actually need to be more visible to inspire that kind of confidence.
Well, this is true. It does seem that he is probably a tremendously hard worker, but part of being a politician is telling a story, selling a narrative, and he doesn't seem to be doing that at all. And he's giving a lot of airtime to Keir Starmer and his shadow cabinet to come across as, understanding the issues that people care about. And we've seen that massive bounce in the polls isn't going anywhere when it comes to Labour scoring highly.
No, that's right. And so basically, Keir Starmer is taking advantage of the vacuum that the Prime Minister is leaving. We're expecting a big keynote speech from Keir Starmer on Thursday. They've been putting forward ideas to deal with the NHS crisis, which is more than the government has. So, for instance, Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, he's talking about one way of reducing waiting lists would be to make more use of the private sector. He reckons there are 233,000 procedures that could be carried out each year by the private sector, or rather more than they do now. And these are kind of ideas that are resonating with the public. The Tories have been in power for 12 years, and people want to know what they're doing about things. And so it's no real surprise that some of the problems that the country is facing are now being laid at the Tories' door. And if Rishi Sunak wants to win the next election, he's got to show he's doing something about it.
He certainly does if he's going to pull back this massive, gap in the polls between the Conservatives and Labour. But of course, all that private action in the NHS is politically toxic, at least for those who shout the loudest. But perhaps that is the answer. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Nigel, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Now, a massive issue for Rishi Sunak that we just touched upon is the migrant crossing issue. The former Director General of Border Force is calling on the government to introduce a fast-track removal process to get a proper grip on the Channel migrant crisis. We're going to be talking about this later with Lee Anderson MP, lots of people's favourite backbencher, and Anne Widdecombe. Last year, at least 46,000 people crossed the English Channel in small boats, but authorities warn this number could double in 2023. I mean, that would be absolutely crazy. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, brings us this report.
Throughout last year, we watched the small boats push off from the beaches of France, saw them cross the Channel mostly unhindered, and witnessed the images as they arrived in Kent in ever greater numbers. Now, the former Director General of Border Force says it's time to get far tougher. Tony Smith wants to see a rapid assessment, detention and then removal of those who are deemed to have no legitimate claim to asylum.
We've got to get into detaining people when they arrive here who are manifestly unfounded, abusing the system, detaining them only for a limited period, for as short as period as this. No one wants to lock people up for months and months, but get all the legal barriers, all of those dealt with really quickly under a detained fast-track process and start seeing removal. We've done it before. We did it in the UKBA when I was there. We had a detained fast-track process and we did deliver significant removals, and that's the best way of getting control of this.
The most obvious candidates for fast-track removal are the 13,000 Albanians who arrived on small boats last year. The UK government has agreed a new rapid returns policy with the government in Tirana, but so far only a handful of Albanian nationals who arrived across the Channel have been sent back. Another key agreement in the government's plans to tackle the small boats crisis is the Rwanda deal. Although the High Court has now ruled the plans to process asylum seekers in that country are lawful, with the possibility of further court appeals, no flights have so far taken off bound for Kigali.
It's taking about 450 days for that to be decided. Why can't those claims be decided within 28 days?
Conservative MP James Daly, who sits on the Home Affairs and Justice Committees, believes, despite any obvious momentum, in the year ahead, Rishi Sunak's government has the right plans in place to tackle the Channel migrant crisis.
This is the moment where we can do something about it. The question which people will judge us on is, should we have done that 3 years ago and sit the years to where we are now? We knew this was coming. We knew these numbers were coming. And it's not acceptable. But I can only be a politician now stood in front of you who says, I want to look forward, we've got the right set of ministers in place, we're going to deliver, in my view, having had talks with various ministers. And that's where I think we're in a good place at the moment to deal with it.
Another one of Rishi Sunak's plans will see the creation of a new Home Office-led unit, bringing together Border Force, the military and the National Crime Agency to focus more effectively on tackling the Channel migrant crisis. The establishment of a dedicated small boats operational command will see the arrival of hundreds more personnel here in Dover. But will it lead to a reduction in crossings? Well, critics suggest all it'll really do is ensure that small boats are intercepted and migrants are processed more efficiently. And for the year ahead, authorities are already quietly planning for up to double the number of last year's arrivals. For Rishi Sunak's government, it's never been more important that the various pieces of his plan to tackle this problem come together. A record number of crossings this year would be politically catastrophic. Mark White, GB News on the Kent coast.
Another brilliant report there from Mark White. Now, please don't forget to vote in the Twitter poll this morning. I want to know whether you have confidence. Do you have faith the government will get to grips with the Channel boat crossings in 2023? Now, I've had a vote in the poll. I wonder whether you can guess what I input there, how I answered. It doesn't look like most of you, at least most of you on Twitter, have much confidence. I think it's about 96% don't. But perhaps there are some of you who think, you know what, Rishi Sunak, he set out his 5-point plan. He set it out. He knows what he's doing. He's going to get it done. Perhaps you think he'll get it done, but we shall see. As always, you can send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews, or me personally, at Carver Emily. Now, after the break, I will be joined by my brilliant panel in just one moment. We've got commentator Narinder Kaur and Claire Muldoon, broadcaster and journalist, to discuss the top stories of the day. That's, of course, after a quick break.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking mostly fine with some sunshine, although generally on the colder side than recently. Let's take a look at the details. Well, there'll be some patchy cloud around across the southwest of England, but it will be dry and the sun will make an appearance at times. Temperatures there will be down on those of late. It will also be a colder day across the southeast, although winds will be lighter than recently, and there'll be a good deal of sunshine here. North Wales might just catch a shower, but further south it will be dry with sunny spells and temperatures will only reach 8 Celsius, 46 Fahrenheit. Towards the northwest of the Midlands, there'll be a chance of a rogue light shower, but the rest of the region will be set fair with light winds and some decent spells of sunshine. The northeast of England can expect wall-to-wall sunshine, as there'll hardly be a cloud in the sky. Despite the sunshine, though, there will be a bit of a cool northwesterly breeze blowing. A similar weather setup is expected across southern parts of Scotland. An isolated shower is possible near to the west coast, but elsewhere skies will be gin clear. Meanwhile, across Northern Ireland, areas of low cloud will limit the amount of sunshine to some extent, and it will be a little on the breezy side. So most places will hold on to dry weather through the afternoon and early evening, but with some showers in the far northwest. And that is how your weather is shaping up on this Bank Holiday Monday.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice, We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. Clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's get a time check. It is 10:22, going on 10:23. This is Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. So I'm going to introduce my lovely panel this morning. I'm pleased to be joined by the reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur, as well as the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. So, I think we're going to kick off with the question that we've been asking viewers this morning. Claire, do you have confidence that the government is going to sort out this problem?
No, I don't. Are you talking about the issue of
the small boats,
asylum seekers and the small boats? No, I don't, because in every single visual that we've had or been sent via Mark White's excellent reporting, we've seen men get off these boats. Where are the refugees seeking asylum from war-torn countries? 13,000 Albanians are using the asylum route. That's wrong. That should be nipped in the bud. And the sooner we actually get to destroying the business model that is actually human trafficking, in my view, the better.
Because we talk about how I take the view that you have to be cruel to be kind when it comes to this. All we've seen is the numbers soar.
Yes.
Talking about double what we've had this year last year coming this year, so that would be nearly 100,000 potentially. Of course, we don't know if that will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised considering how they seem to be going up exponentially. What do you think the answer is?
I don't know what the answer is.
But you're not the border force.
I'm not the border force, but, you know, I know for a fact, as soon as the fact that anyone who arrives in this country, either by a legitimate plane or legitimate methods, as soon as they mention the word asylum and seeking, everything has to change. They have to be treated in a different way from those that they know who aren't legitimate. But the minute they utter those words, they have to be encapsulated, they have to be charted, they have to be processed in a way as if they were seeking asylum.
Narinder, it does seem like the general public is being gaslit a little bit, or sometimes at least, because people can see with their own eyes that many of these people are young men from Albania and from other countries who wouldn't traditionally be seen as asylum seekers or refugees. Do you think there needs to be a level of honesty from some areas of the press, actually, who seem to try to be telling us that everyone who's crossing the channel is a victim in one way or another?
Well, I think you run the risk of the genuine victims who do need help, and we are a compassionate country, we do need to take them in. And you said a very good point, young men. We need young men. Our economy is inactive. We need the workers. I'd say migration, you know, compared to the rest of the world, there's 23 million refugees in the world. We take a very little amount. And this argument that, oh, we don't have the housing, we don't have this, we don't have that.
We don't.
It's weak because we do have them, because you took 200,000 Ukrainians and you took 220,000 Hong Kongers.
Well,
and we suddenly found the housing.
The difference there is, with the Ukrainians at least, is that was a scheme which relied on British families putting them up.
We found the schools, we found the NHS, but we found everything.
And the idea was that it would be temporary. So, i.e., when the war in Ukraine is over, and hopefully it will be this year,
who says they will go back?
People will go back.
We don't know that. But I'd say young men, we've got such an ageing population. We need this. They will drive the economy. They will spend money.
I'm sorry, but Mark White has done some fantastic research into this and real journalism, and he's looked at this and spoken to people who are actually there at the coalface on the border, and he knows full well that many of these young men, particularly the ones from Albania, are not coming for refuge.
No, they're not.
Coming to take part in our what do you call it, the black economy,
the black
shadow
economy.
Well, had we not come out of the Dublin Agreement with Brexit, we could have sent people back. But because of that, we can't. Then
hang on, you said you want them here.
Well, no, but I'm saying if your argument is to win, we should have stayed in Brexit, or we should have somehow stayed in the Dublin Agreement. Now, the Dublin Agreement meant that we could send them back, but we can't send them back now. The problem is we need to change the law.
It is within the gift of our government to do something about it. Do you think the will is just not there?
Because the will is there, but it's become such a political hotbed at the moment. And to be honest with you, it's the least, I think, of the government's worries at the moment. We need to tackle the incidents, the terrible waiting lists and deaths in the NHS. We need to tackle schools, education. We need to tackle tax. We need to tackle the cost of living crisis. And the fact that the statistics today that we're going to have double the amount of refugees put back into the country, where we have a homelessness issue because of poverty, driven not only by 12 years of...
We also have economic and inactivity.
12 years of Conservative governance, notwithstanding what's happened in Scotland under the SNP for the past 14 years... You know, I think that
and they're fussing about gender recognition. I mean, you can't make it up.
Exactly, you can't make it up. And it's really, really sad. But there is no women and children on these boats. It is men,
women
it's criminals.
and children don't come first.
Narendra,
Narendra,
this is specifically wrong, and it's so wrong on so many levels. This is a business model that the Albanians are using to gain access to the UK, and they're actually using it. How many barbershops have been set up? You know, it's this black economy.
You're saying all Albanians are criminals. I mean,
I didn't say all were.
Hang on, that's not fair. Claire never said that. Anyway, we're going to have to move on from this very, this political hot potato, as you said, Claire, to another hot potato, perhaps. It is the NHS. And now the papers are covered in bad news about the NHS. Narendra, what would you like to point out?
Well, OK, so A&E delays killing up to 500 patients every week, so they say. Now, my point of view is they're not paying the nurses enough. We don't have enough staff. We're coming back to immigration here. We need nurses. We need doctors. We're not paying them enough. Rishi Sunak still isn't sat at the table to talk about negotiating to pay them more. And we've got strikes going on, which I think they're entitled to strike. But this isn't new. The NHS has been crumbling for years and years. My mum passed away in 2010, and I remember it was a bank holiday weekend, there wasn't enough staff. That was 2010, and we're still talking about the same thing. This isn't new.
Yeah, I mean, every single year we have the same headlines.
Well, look, the reality is the NHS has never been funded more than it is now in real terms in 2023 as we are now, OK? I believe the issue in the NHS is mismanagement of funds, a Luddite IT system, and it's not about Rishi. It's not Rishi's job to sit round the table and discuss nurses' pay.
Whoever's job.
It's Steve Barclay, who's the department head for the health service.
But he hasn't sat with them.
He has sat, but he has taken the view, the very dim view, in my opinion, that he will not discuss pay and conditions. It's not so much the pay. It's the conditions that they're in. And the conditions for an NHS worker in the medical side have always been poor within the NHS. Junior doctors for years have said we're overworked, we're overtired, we're overused, right? We're under-resourced. There are, issues with human resource servicing. Administration in the NHS is shocking.
I'm worried.
The other issue is...
The other issue is...
And tell me your other issue, and then we'll come straight back to you,
Narendra, the other issue is the fact that we are using Dr Google. We are actually manifesting our own symptoms. We are then presenting to our GPs, if we can get the appointment, to say we've got this, that and this wrong with us. Please do something about it.
I do worry because I can see the government
wasn't set up to do this.
No, I can see the government's argument that they can't give massive pay rises because then every single area of the public sector will demand the same, and that is an issue, and I do accept that. But I worry that morale is so low in the NHS, and I've spoken to friends of mine who work within the NHS, and they do just seem rather miserable. Now, I think there's a malaise across the board when it comes to our economy. I think people are pretty miserable all over the place, although we'll try and make you happier today. But what do we do about that?
I think there's two...
Do you accept that the NHS needs a fundamental change?
It needs a fundamental change because there's two fundamental differences now. It was created so many years ago. We've got an ageing population. They're living longer. I've got so many friends, I used to be a medical rep, who are doctors. Old people are living older. There's more problems. They're taking up the beds. Social care. Once they're in that bed and they're better, they've got nowhere to go. So the social care, we need more funding there. But the problem also is us. We do need to look after ourselves better. I don't know if you've had the unfortunate of being in A&E. I have plenty of times, sadly, but every single time, all I hear is, how much have you drunk? How much have you smoked? We're not looking after ourselves. Why is it the government's responsibility? Why is it the NHS's responsibility for problems we're bringing on ourselves?
Well, a lot of people would agree with you, Narendra. The last time I was in A&E, it was for a self-inflicted e-scooter accident, and I may or may not have had a glass of wine before.
Well, actually, mine was
that was very silly.
Mine was a drinking. Can you believe? I feel dreadful. It was my 50th. Drank a little bit too much. I was one of those people, and I was mortified because I'm sat in A&E when they could be looking after a stroke, heart attack, and because I drank a little bit.
Well, there you go. Narendra Kaur, you are a reformed citizen, and you won't be doing that again. So, after the break, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has told Russians that their leader is destroying their country. This comes after a fresh wave of attacks ordered by Putin. What's next between Russia and Ukraine as we enter 2023? I'll be joined by a Ukrainian Parliament advisor. That's after your morning news.
Emily, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Health bosses are calling for the government to declare a major incident within the NHS over mounting pressure on the service. The Society for Acute Medicine has called the current situation urgent, whilst NHS providers says the service is under equivalent levels of pressure as during the early stage of the COVID pandemic. It follows the Royal College of Emergency Medicine saying as many as 500 people could be dying each week because of delays to critical care. The government said it recognised the pressures faced by the NHS. The former Director General of Border Force has called on the government to get far tougher with Channel migrants. Tony Smith has told GB News the Home Secretary needs to introduce a detention and fast-track removal process to get a proper grip on the small boats crisis. It comes as a record number of migrants, almost 46,000, crossed the English Channel to the UK last year. Two men charged with the murder of footballer Cody Fisher in a nightclub on Boxing Day are due in court today. 21-year-old Cammy Carpenter and 22-year-old Remy Gordon will appear before Birmingham Magistrates Court. They've also been charged with a fray. 23-year-old Cody Fisher was killed on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub, which had its licence suspended for 28 days on Friday. Tens of thousands of people are expected to pay their respects in Rome as Pope Benedict is lying in state at the Vatican. The body will remain there for 3 days before the funeral on Thursday. Pope Benedict XVI became the first pontiff to resign in 600 years in 2013. He died on Saturday at the age of 95. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Right, it is 10:37 o'clock in the morning on Bank Holiday Monday. This is Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has told Russians that Vladimir Putin is destroying their country in a hard-hitting New Year's video message. It came as Ukraine defences shot down 12 of 20 Russian cruise missiles on New Year's Eve after a fresh wave of attacks was ordered by the Russian president. As Ukrainians saw in 2023 under the sound of air raid sirens, one Russian missile that landed in Kyiv had Happy New Year scrawled on it. Charming. But what's next between Russia and Ukraine as we enter the new year? Joining me now is Ukrainian Parliament advisor Mykola Volkivsky. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, there are many ways. Well, firstly, can you please bring us up to date as to what has been happening over the past few days? We've had terrible reports of missile strikes in Kyiv.
Good morning. Of course, if we are talking about the Kyiv, for example, we need to see and we need to tell that one of the Ukrainian hotel Alphavita was destroyed, one part of this hotel by the Russian 21st of December. Also, one of the part of Kyiv, the Shevchenko National University, was under missile attack by the Russians. You know, it's like the 5 buildings of this university was destroyed, not completely, but partly. If we're talking not just about the Kyiv and Kyiv region, it was missile attacks, you know, for example, on the night between 21st and 1st of January, by the night from 2 nights and 4. It was a lot of attacks of drones, even now, from the Russians and Kyiv region. Around also, there was under the attack, the Khmelnytsky region, as all the time, with the occupied Kherson all the time, you know, all day and nights under attack by the Russians. It's a member of the city was totally, they don't have like electricity and power. From the Christmas, from the New Year message of Vladimir Zelensky, we heard a lot of, you know, story how Ukrainian was dealing by the Russian since 24th of February, and the Ukrainians was positively said about the Christmas and the New Year message from Ukrainian president. If we're talking about the future on a positive or possible peace talk agreements by the Russians, we know with diplomacy now to deal in, you know, much more better. And we know with the Ukrainian side, we need to talk with the Russians just for Ukrainian perspective. And as for me, it will be important when next 2 weeks we will participate in World Economic Forum Davos. We hope that a lot of world leaders will talk about the Ukraine, of how to deal, you know, with Russia. And so from 16th to 19th of January, it will be important week for world and world diplomacy in Switzerland. But hopefully we will deal with this, and the Russia will stop in this killing the Ukrainians in the Ukraine by the attacking of civilian people.
Mykola, you touched upon it there, but what is Zelensky's game plan here? I'm not sure turning up to the World Economic Forum is going to be the answer. You mentioned they're talking more with Russia. Does that mean that some kind of negotiated settlement might be on the cards in the new year?
We know where we see that the Ukrainian trying, to have some peace talks with the Russians in last year in February and March in Belarus, and also we're trying, to have some summits on the level of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Turkey in April last year. I don't know if it's actually like some new plan, how to deal with Russia. But for example, we know that Russia need to immediately deoccupy the territory because we Ukrainian. We need to have the Ukrainian territory every square kilometer. What Ukrainian president mentioned during his video message, which was Ukraine was receiving 24th of August 1991 since Ukrainian independence. If it's some positive agreements will be, if this with Russia, we need to wait for their answer. But they all the time try to mention it. I mean, like the Dmitry Peskov and the press secretary of Vladimir Putin, it's must, just talk before the territory and something. We need to see that Crimea need to also to take it back from the Russia and taken back to Ukraine. But from this reason, it's the diplomacy and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of presidential office will prepare it, some negotiations with them. But even now, I don't know if we have some strategically planning how to deal with Russia in level of diplomacy.
Now, Mykola, our hearts go out, the British public hearts go out to people who are essentially suffering a freezing winter with those power outages, without heating, living through the destruction and despair that this war has brought on, that Putin's invasion has brought on for those people. But there are also concerns that this could be very long and protracted, some saying that this could go well on into the next new year. What do you think the chances are of a win for Ukraine?
We received information, for example, during Warsaw Security Forum. I just used to talk with the former general, with some generals, U.S. generals from NATO, and he said me just 2 weeks before the Ukrainian deoccupied Kherson, the Kherson will be deoccupied. And also he tell me that before July next year, the Crimea will be taken back from the Russia and taken back to Ukraine. From this side, we need to be totally sure the Ukrainian will win this war. But, how long will we continue this war? We didn't know. From this reason, the Russian, all the time, Russian mass media, their politicians just say wondering how Ukrainians said, for example, they just preferring, be without electricity or just with staying with Russia. From this reason, the Ukrainian spirit and soul, we started, continue to fighting against Russia on every level. And we know that, for example, in also the UK and many governments, they started to, to send the Ukrainians a lot of humanitarian aid and support, and also the generator and stuff. And from this reason, we're thankful for this support, which was like since 24th of February, volunteers from many people who supporting Ukraine.
Thank you very much for that. I think we can all hope for a solution as quickly as possible. That was Ukrainian Parliament advisor Mykola Volkivsky. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us that latest from Ukraine. Now, Northern Ireland has been without a working government for the majority of 2022, with unionists refusing to enter government because of the post-Brexit arrangements. Known as the Protocol, of course, they're objecting to how it keeps them inside the laws of the European Union and keeps Northern Ireland's economy in alignment with that of the Irish Republic. We've got Dougie Beattie, who's looked back at last year's events and wonders how long this can continue.
Our institutions are being tested once again, and the delicate balance created by the Belfast and St Andrews agreements has been impacted by the agreement made by the United Kingdom government and the European Union, which created the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Just a few short weeks into 2022, the then First Minister, Paul Givan, collapses the Northern Ireland Executive, and it's over the controversial Brexit legislation known as the Protocol. Sinn Féin's John O'Dowd, who supports the protocol, explains the legal position of the Northern Ireland Executive.
The Executive has a position that they will adhere to the protocol, to the European Withdrawal Agreement, And the principle remains for all executive ministers. You have to adhere to the law. Legal advice can be given on a range of matters, and a range of opinions will be given in regards to legal advice. Courts make the decisions.
The following election saw the splitting of the unionist vote and allowed Sinn Féin to take the most seats. But because of the Good Friday Agreement that's based on consent, without cross-community support, no government was able to be formed. Ashley Piggott is a business leader who has traded in many boardrooms around the world and sees the protocol as a distinct disadvantage.
The cost of the protocol as of the Trade Support Service is £170 million per year. That's essentially a short-form customs entry system. On top of that, companies today are paying approximately £50 million to get goods into Northern Ireland, and that covers vehicle movements for hauliers and for administration costs with companies. On top of that, there's differentials of customs duties. So customs duties in the EU are much higher than they are in the UK. All told, that's about £250 million per annum, which Northern Ireland plc is going to have to pay for something which adds zero value.
Like the rest of the UK, problems over public sector pay exists. But while no ministers are in office, these decisions will now be made from Westminster. Secretary of State Chris Heaton-Harris threatened elections on 8th of December, but now acknowledges there is a problem for the unionist community.
I completely understand that the big impasse for one of the unionist community is what is going on with the protocol. But as I continually say, the atmosphere in those talks has completely changed in recent weeks. And I am, as I said at the very top of this, an optimist, and I really do believe we can get somewhere on those too.
2023 will be the 25th anniversary of the historical Good Friday Agreement. And if there's any celebrations to be had, the Secretary of State will have to signal when he wants elections to happen. That will have to take place no later than January the 19th. Dougie Beattie, GB News.
Thank you very much indeed, Dougie Beattie, for giving us that report. Now, I've got my panel back with me this morning. I'm pleased to be joined by the reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur. Can we really call you a TV reality star anymore?
No, can we stop that now?
Now, political commentator.
It's been 20 years.
Very serious political commentator with us. And we also have broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Now, we've got some interesting stories here. You could perhaps call them lighter, but I think they are very important indeed. Now, the News is saying that teachers are concerned about the impact of alpha male influences on boys. This is talking about, of course, Andrew Tate, who I believe was brought into custody and charged, or at least allegations of him, various things.
He
wasn't charged, he was released.
Well, anyway, he's been under a lot of heat.
I didn't actually know pre-Christmas who this man was. And it was only with the furor over everything else that's happened with him and the spat on Twitter on Greta Thunberg and him that his name was actually brought to my attention. My youngest child is 18 years old and is my only son. He's got 3 older sisters. And, I had a discussion about Andrew Tate with Tom, and Tom said, he's a bit of a expletive mum. Don't worry about it. And it was my daughters actually that framed him in such a way to make me think he was an absolute misogynist. And sometimes they would, run away with things. But then when I actually investigated it, when I actually researched him, he actually truly is quite a vile man. But he's had so much exposure to the extent that the research has gone back to the best article that was written by Hugo Rifkind, in fact, in September last year. And even he said, spending 2 hours with him, he's a very strange man.
Very strange man.
Very, very, very strange man. And it really does concern me to think that teachers now are concerned about the impact of his alpha male status.
Well, apparently he comes up in every class. He's always mentioned, this is what teachers have been saying. May I just say that Tate was detained in Romania on Thursday on suspicion of human trafficking and rape. He was held alongside his brother Tristan and 2 other suspects in Bucharest. He is currently being held in custody, so he's still in custody, at least according to the newspaper this morning. Now, to give some balance to this, could it be that Andrew Tate and the things he says and the way he does have a lot of fans among young men is because it's a reaction to the hyper-progressive, hyper-feminised rhetoric that goes around on in schools and in general life?
Yeah, Andrew Tate is the most searched human on the internet. More than Harry, Meghan, more than Beyonce, more than the Queen, more than the King. He is the most searched. He is so popular amongst young men. Now, my son is 17. He goes, and I said, Jeevan, tell me about Andrew Tate. Oh, he's the original. He's the G. He's the G. Now, my son, look, he's my son. He's not going to be misogynistic. But this man, Andrew Tate, has found a gap and filled it because young boys feel ignored. It's all about women's right, girls' right, women's right, girls' right, which it should be. Our voices need to be heard. But he's found a gap. Boys are not being felt heard. They're ignored. All their feelings are ignored. He's found a gap. He's an unsavoury character. I mean, I'm astonished he's got this university, Hustlers University in Romania, where people can make money, and it is about sex. It's about selling sex on, which is legal. It's all legal in Romania, remember. He's not doing anything illegal other than he's just misogynistic.
What's quite interesting as well is that he's converted to Islam and he believes in polygamy and things. I wonder if that's the...
Of course he would. I mean, he would do anything to, you know, to aid his narrative. He would have anything to have that optic, just to be a bright shining star in the sky that he really wants to be. The unfortunate thing is he has made a channel into these young, impressionable lads selling porn to be, you know, the best thing, or to make normalise porn. It's atrocious. He might not be bankrupt, but he's certainly morally bankrupt.
And we know, hang on, Narendra, we know that porn is very much normalised, and it may well be one of the things that is the reason for this next headline that we're going to have a look at. 3 in 4 children, this is on the front of The Guardian, 3 in 4 children dislike how they look. Narendra, does this ring true for you?
Well, I've got a daughter. She's 15 years old, and as I was saying in the green room, lunchtimes, you know, I get a record of what she's eaten, a packet of crisps, because they don't want to eat, they want to be thin. This isn't, again, new. This has been going on since I was a teenager. Everyone wanted to be thin. And it's not to do with porn. Back in the day, there wasn't anything like that. It was magazines, and it was the skinny models, the stick-thin models, which is why the Kardashians was actually a good thing, because it promoted curviness. But this is boys as well, and as I was saying to you, my 17-year-old son, even he is like, oh my God, I better not eat this, I better not that. Everyone has this pressure to have to look good, especially children.
Well, I think this is definitely the rise in social media as well. The exception is not the rule. The exception is the fact that you want to be normal because everything's filtered. Everyone is filtered and they're seeking validation from their peers. And it's the wrong way to go about it. We all know that. OK, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but we need to instruct some kindness, some morality, and give it a compass.
And the other things matter. I remember seeing some startling poll about what children want to be when they're older, and influencer was top of the list, if not...
As long as it's not reality TV star anymore.
That was a report before Christmas, and it was by the City and Guilds, and it found 5,000, it did a poll of 5,000, and a lot of them didn't want to be anything other than an influencer. There were some that didn't even want to work because they don't see the value of it. These are a generation...
But also they see these people making more money than they could ever imagine making as a doctor or as a nurse or as a hairdresser or as whatever.
Yeah, there's no value to that for them. And, you know, that's why you've got 3 in 4 children, and that's at the age of 12. This is appalling.
This is quite interesting. And when I was 15, 16, I started getting, you know, wanting to be skinny. You know, I'd eat half my lunch, you know, exercise loads because, I mean, that was a girls' school, so that was probably part of the problem. But the obsession with perfection or perceived perfection, and now you can just use all these filters on your phone to give you a, you know, the same look as everyone else.
This is an age-old argument. This has been going on for years. And the thing is, like you just said, there's no value to being a doctor. There's no value to being a doctor because doctors themselves in this country and nurses don't feel valued. They're overworked, they're not paid enough, and no one cares anymore. So why should they? It is all about being an influencer, reality TV star. It's sad.
Very sad.
I'd like to think that actually our youth inherently good people. They're not bad people, they're good people.
Well, they've been locked up for 2 years as well, so they don't know how to communicate effectively, I would say, and they don't know how to, even get together or have get-togethers or whatever.
Now, come on, producers, if I have time, I'm not sure if I have time, but I just very quickly want to talk about the front page of the Times, which is Extinction Rebellion have apparently announced that they're giving up on protests which disrupt the public. What's this about, Claire?
Bravo. This is the best news this whole year I've heard so far. Extinction Rebellion will not be throwing tomato soup over works of art in the National. They will not be stopping me from getting to work on time or loads of other people in the country. They will not be causing deaths because they've stuck to themselves to roads. No. They are going to stop this nonsense of protesting. And do you know why? From their own lips, it hasn't worked.
No, I think they will carry on protesting as they should, and I completely support them, but just...
You support people, you support
them.
Oh, no, Rinda.
Yeah, completely support it.
Ambulances couldn't get through because they blew themselves to the road.
That argument is so weak. It was like
it's not weak, it happened.
And no, because they're allowed to protest. We're in a free country.
Peacefully.
They should be. And it was peaceful.
Under the Public Order Bill, people can protest peacefully and use a democratic right for freedom of speech. However, they cannot be a public discourse. They cannot upset the public.
And they were arrested for that, and they did time
also,
for that.
Narinda, the aims of Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil and most of these groups are just so ridiculous, would cripple our economy, would leave us living in poverty, send us back decades. I'm sorry, but if we want to live in a greener world, we still need gas, we still need oil, we still need these fossil fuels in order to get there. There's no coming back from that. That is how the world works.
And I think we should go further, as Sweden have done as a country, and scrap net zero, because all it is a lot of hot air being spoken in Davos, in all the COPs, and nothing is actually
But how do you know that? How do you know? The world is in trouble. How do you know that
we know the world is in trouble, but, we can stop the plastics for a second. We can do this.
It's not enough. It's not enough being done.
Do you know what? We, as a country, the UK will never solve this. We are too small. You need to look to China.
Let's just ignore it then.
China and India.
No, but I think the balance needs to be struck between impoverishing ourselves and pretending that we can change the temperature of the entire globe
as one single country
by having a heat pump in your garden. There's a balance to strike. I must say, I read a very funny but also quite scary book called The Decline by a journalist called Ross Clark, which is a satire on all of this green net zero drive. And what ends up is people end up being charged for crimes by denying climate change or ecocide, etc., etc. Anyway, a book for you to read,
perhaps. Black Mirror, and I think that might happen.
It is a bit like Black Mirror, and it's quite true. Right, thank you very much indeed. That's the end of our first hour. I'll be right back with more after a short break. We'll have Lee Anderson and Anne Widdecombe, so stay tuned.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Yes, good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Now, before midday, an exclusive report from GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White reveals authorities are anticipating more than 90,000 channel migrants will arrive to Britain this year, 2023, double the 46,000 that came in 2022. We'll bring you his exclusive report with the former director of Border Force next, and I'll also be joined by Tory grandee Anne Widdecombe and current Conservative MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, to get their thoughts too. That'll be a good one. Plus, breaking this morning, Prince Harry will sit down for an explosive interview with CBS anchor Anderson Cooper in the US on Sunday to promote his new book. That's released a week tomorrow. The memoir will reportedly savage Harry's brother, Prince William, in yet another round of attacks from the Duke. Is there nothing he won't do for money? Also, Britain has its first non-binary priest. Whatever next. Bingo Allison, what a name, says they were guided to come out by God. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Health bosses are calling for the government to declare a major incident within the NHS over mounting pressure on the service. The Society for Acute Medicine has called the current situation urgent, whilst NHS providers says the service is under equivalent levels of pressure as during the early stage of the COVID pandemic. It follows the Royal College of Emergency Medicine saying as many as 500 people could be dying each week because of delays to critical care. More than a dozen NHS trusts and ambulance services declared critical incidents over the festive period. The government said it recognised the pressures faced by the NHS. Well, some people are resorting to DIY medicine when they can't see a GP face-to-face. A recent survey commissioned by the Lib Dems shows more than 1 in 4 adults have not been able to get an in-person appointment in the past 12 months. 16% of those who can't see a doctor have resorted to homemade medicine or asking someone not qualified to help. The Department for Health and Social Care say they recognise the pressures GPs are under and are working to increase access for patients. UK and French authorities have started patrolling beaches together for the first time in a bid to stop migrants crossing the English Channel. The joint patrols are believed to have taken place in France just before Christmas after months of talks between the two countries. Former Border Force boss Tony Smith told GB News the government needs to introduce a detention and fast-track removal process to get a grip on the small boats crisis. The Prime Minister has promised to introduce laws ensuring those who enter the country illegally won't be allowed to stay. It's after almost 46,000 people were recorded crossing the Channel to the UK last year. 2 men charged with the murder of footballer Cody Fisher in a nightclub on Boxing Day are due in court today. 21-year-old Cammy Carpenter and 22-year-old Remy Gordon will appear before Birmingham Magistrates Court. They've also been charged with a fray. 23-year-old Cody Fisher was killed on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub, which had its licence suspended for 28 days on Friday. Marvel actor Jeremy Renner is reportedly in a critical but stable condition following a weather-related incident. A spokesperson says the 51-year-old, well known for playing Hawkeye, was airlifted to hospital after the accident, which occurred while he was ploughing snow. 2-time Oscar nominee is reportedly receiving excellent care. It comes as dozens of people have been killed across the US amid heavy winds and snow. 2 helicopters have collided mid-air in Australia's Gold Coast region, killing 4 people and critically injuring 3 more. Queensland Police have said emergency services attended the scene near the SeaWorld theme park after 2 aircrafts crash-landed after the collision. An investigation has now been launched. Tens of thousands of people have gathered to celebrate as Inácio Lula da Silva was sworn in as Brazil's president for a 3rd time. The 77-year-old defeated far-right candidate Bolsonaro in October. In his speech, Lula da Silva pledged to unite the country and govern for all Brazilians. Well, tens of thousands of people are also expected to pay their respects in Rome as Pope Benedict is lying in state at the Vatican. His body will remain there for 3 days before the funeral on Thursday. Pope Benedict XVI became the first pontiff to resign in 600 years in 2013. He died on Saturday at the age of 95. The hearse carrying the coffin of Brazilian footballing legend Pelé has left Sao Paulo for the funeral in Santos. Fans started to gather last night near the Urbano Caldeira Stadium, Pelé's hometown club, for the mass 24-hour public wake. The 3-time World Cup winner died on Thursday at the age of 82 after battling colon cancer for just over 1 year. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Emily.
This show is flying by this morning. I don't know about you, but I didn't expect to be this full of beans on Bank Holiday Monday after New Year's Eve, but hey, here we are. This is Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Now, coming up, Tory stars of past and present Anne Widdecombe and Lee Anderson MP join me for their take on the migrant crisis, as GB News reveals today that authorities anticipate nearly 100,000 Channel migrants may come to the UK next year. I want to know your views on that. We'll also be getting stuck into Prince Harry, who is set for another explosive sit-down television interview in America this Sunday ahead of his bombshell book publication. I wonder if there will be any bombshells in there or if it will be the same old. Anyway, and we will also have details of Britain's first non-binary priest who says God guided them to come out as non-binary. And of course, this show is nothing without you and your views. Please don't forget to vote in the poll on Twitter. This morning, we are asking you, do you have confidence the government will get to grips with the Channel boat crossings in 2023? Now, I don't wish to sway your vote at all, but at the moment, 97%, whopping 97%, have no confidence, and that's out of 4,000 or so people who have voted in our poll. So please do get your votes in before the end of the show and email me on gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews or at Carver Emily to have your say. Right, the former Director General of Border Force is calling on the government to introduce a fast-track removal process to get a proper grip on the Channel migrant crisis. Last year, at least 46,000 people crossed the English Channel in small boats, but authorities warn this number could double in 2023. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has brought us this exclusive report.
Throughout last year, we watched the small boats push off from the beaches of France, saw them cross the Channel mostly unhindered, and witnessed the images as they arrived in Kent in ever greater numbers. Now the former Director General of Border Force says it's time to get far tougher. Tony Smith wants to see a rapid assessment, detention and then removal of those who are deemed to have no legitimate claim to asylum.
We've got to get into detaining people
when they arrive here who are manifestly unfounded, abusing the system, detaining them only for a limited period, for as short as period as this. No one wants to lock people up for months and months, but get all the legal barriers, all of those dealt with really quickly under a detained fast-track process and start seeing removal. We've done it before. We did it in the UKBA when I was there. We had a detained fast-track process and we did deliver significant removals, and that's the best way of getting control of this.
The most obvious candidates for fast-track removal are the 13,000 Albanians who arrived on small boats last year. The UK government has agreed a new rapid returns policy with the government in Tirana, but so far only a handful of Albanian nationals who arrived across the Channel have been sent back. Another key agreement in the government's plans to tackle the small boats crisis is the Rwanda deal. Although the High Court has now ruled the plans to process asylum seekers in that country are lawful, with the possibility of further court appeals, no flights have so far taken off bound for Kigali.
It's taking about 450 days for that to be decided. Why can't those claims be decided within 28 days?
Conservative MP James Daly, who sits on the Home Affairs and Justice Committees, believes, despite any obvious momentum, in the year ahead, Rishi Sunak's government has the right plans in place to tackle the Channel migrant crisis.
This is the moment where we can do something about it. The question which people will judge us on is, should we have done that 3 years ago? And it's to where we are now. We knew this was coming. We knew these numbers were coming. And it's not acceptable. But I can only be a politician now stood in front of you who says, I want to look forward, we've got the right set of ministers in place, we're going to deliver, in my view, having had talks with various ministers. And that's where I think we're in a good place at the moment to deal with it.
Another one of Rishi Sunak's plans will see the creation of a new Home Office-led unit, bringing together Border Force, the military and the National Crime Agency to focus more effectively on tackling the Channel migrant crisis. The establishment of a dedicated small boats operational command will see the arrival of hundreds more personnel here in Dover. But will it lead to a reduction in crossings? Well, critics suggest all it'll really do is ensure that small boats are intercepted and migrants are processed more efficiently. And for the year ahead, authorities are already quietly planning for up to double the number of last year's arrivals. For Rishi Sunak's government, it's never been more important that the various pieces of his plan to tackle this problem come together. A record number of crossings this year would be politically catastrophic. Mark White, GB News on the Kent coast.
Right, now to discuss this further, I'm delighted to be joined by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe and current Conservative MP for Ashfield, no-nonsense Lee Anderson. Anne, now, our poll this morning that we put out on Twitter, it might be a little bit self-selecting, but apparently 97% of 4,000 people polled this morning have no confidence in the government to get to grips with this crisis this year.
Indeed, and were I joining in your poll, I would be one of that number. And the reason that we've got no confidence is simply that the government has been talking for a long, long time and has been doing nothing. And the more that they say that they're going to get tougher and they've got this initiative and that initiative, the more migrants come in. Now, I think we heard good sense there from the former head of the Border Force in saying that the only way that you're going to get around this is what I said, more than 20 years ago when I was Shadow Home Secretary, which is that you automatically detain, that's the word, detain, all new asylum seekers in secure reception centres, so you know where they are. You can process their claims and you can then return those that you're not going to accept. And that is what we need to do. And of course, it needs to be fast-tracked. And we've heard about fast-tracking through successive governments for donkey's years, and nothing actually ever happens. And I think that is the frustration that is behind it. Now, let's ask a very simple question. Why is it that people want to come to Britain? They're in a safe country like France. Why don't they apply for asylum there? And the answer is this. We're the easiest country in the entire West in which to disappear. because we don't have national identity cards. We do not routinely practice detention, so that when we finally come to say no to somebody after what can be a very long drawn-out process, we don't even know where they are. They've gone into what is a flourishing underground economy. Now, that is therefore the message that goes out is, come to Britain and it's very unlikely that you'll ever be removed. We need to reverse that message. And the message that we should be sending out is, you come here with a false or a flimsy claim, you'll be detained, you'll be dealt with quickly, you'll be sent home. Nobody's going to pay £5,000 to a human trafficking agent for that. That is the message we need to get out there, and until we do detention and fast tracking, that message will not go out.
Lee, I can see the headlines already on the broadcast with the word detain. Tory government detains migrants. You can see the warnings would be. People would be up in uproar, would they not?
Well, listen, Emily, no. I mean, the normal, decent, hard-working taxpayer in places like Ashfield, where I represent, would welcome this move. In fact, give me the lock and key, and I'll go and do it myself. I cannot see. I mean, I look at the 97% there that people don't trust us on this. I understand where they're coming from. And actually, it's about 97% or 98% of these people that's crossing the channel that aren't genuine asylum seekers. They are not genuine asylum seekers. They are making a mockery of our whole system. They should be detained. And I mean, Anne's 20 years ahead of me. And I was asking for this when I first got elected. I cannot see, when we got young men coming to this country in their early 20s, we don't know where they're from, what they've been up to, what country they've come from. This is a risk for us. They should be detained. And the fact it's taking months, sometimes years, to get these claims sorted is absolutely pathetic. The Home Office, we see one of the leading civil servants has just received a massive award in the honours list. He should give that back. He's been contributing towards the ineffective borders. Look, I'm not going to sit here and apologise for what's happened since I've been elected. We should apologise to the country. I've got a little bit of confidence now, a bit more confidence than I had this time last year. We've got new legislation coming in next month, which pretty much parrots what Anne just says. If you arrive here illegally, you will be detained and you will be removed swiftly. And it should be within 28 days. That's my opinion.
Now, Anne, you know how the law works. You know how the courts work. Now, the Rwanda policy. The High Court ruled that it was lawful. So why on earth are those flights not taking off?
Well, as you know, there appears to be no such thing in this country as a final ruling. And even if it's the High Court passing a judgment, that can still be challenged. It can go to the Supreme Court, and then there'll be a challenge on new grounds. So I think what the government's got to do is terribly simple. The government is in charge of what the law is. The courts are in charge of interpreting the law, but the government makes the law. And if there is any ambiguity whatever in the law, and actually on this occasion I don't think there is, but if there is any ambiguity whatever in the law, it is up to government to change that in order to enable it to implement its own policies. Now that's so basic. That's almost 11 plus style basic politics. But for some reason, governments just don't seem to get to grips with it. And I say governments advisedly, because it's not just this government that is paralysed by appeal after appeal after appeal, legal action, change the grounds, bring fresh grounds. That is something the government itself can do and should do. And what the heck have we got a parliament for if it can't?
Now, Lee, it's not a particularly fun time to be a Conservative MP, I don't imagine. I mean, look at the front of the Daily Mail. It's all bad news, all of the newspapers. Would 100,000 Channel migrants next year be political suicide?
Yes, absolutely. And, with what Anne said earlier about the Supreme Court and different rulings and different challenges, I'd go a little bit stronger than Anne on this one. I'd just ignore it and send them straight back. I'd start today with flights, get them on the flight, send them back. Because I've always said, if people crossing the channel think they're going to get on an aeroplane to Rwanda the following day, they would stop coming. They would not pay £5,000 to people smugglers. And yes, you're quite right, Emily. If we don't get this sorted, it is political suicide. I'm quite embarrassed when I go out and about in Ashfield when people calling me about this. It's the only thing they're talking about. We've got the cost of living crisis, we've got the strikes, but the number one issue from my constituents is this. The optics are absolutely awful, and it should not happen under a Conservative government.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe and current Conservative MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of truth bombs there, I think. Now, of course, don't forget to vote in our Twitter poll. We are asking you, do you have confidence the government will get to grips with the Channel boat crossings in 2023? 97% of you don't think they do. That's not great. It does look like that will certainly be political suicide for the Conservatives if they don't sort this one out. As always, you can send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. I'll get to some of those comments very soon indeed, but after the break I will be joined again by my brilliant panel in just one moment. We've got reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur and Claire Muldoon, broadcaster and journalist, to discuss the top stories of the day, including Prince Harry's latest attack on the Windsors and Britain's first non-binary priest. All the biggest news for you there. That's after the break.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry and settled, albeit with a few showers in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Some showers will affect the far north and west of Scotland this afternoon, falling as snow over the hills. The rest of the country looks mainly dry with plenty of sunshine. It will be a dry afternoon across Northern Ireland. There will be a bit of a breeze blowing, although plenty of sunshine's expected too. Across the northwest of England, there'll be some patchy cloud, but most places will stay dry and there'll be some sunshine at times. An isolated shower cannot be entirely ruled out across North Wales, although the majority of the country will be set fair. However, despite the sunny spells, it will be a colder day than on Sunday. It will feel colder than of late across the East Midlands as well. There'll be a fair amount of sunshine here, although temperatures will only reach 7 or 8 Celsius. The fine weather will extend across into East Anglia as well. It will be dry. There'll be lots of sunny spells and just a gentle west to northwesterly breeze. The wind should be less of a feature across the southern counties of England, with a ridge of high pressure overhead. It should be mostly sunny, albeit quite cool. Heading into the evening, and the odd shower will continue in the far north, but elsewhere it looks dry with clear periods and dipping temperatures. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Right, it is 11:25 in the morning on your bank holiday Monday. This is Bev Turner today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Please do keep getting in touch about that poll that we're doing this morning. Do you have confidence that the government can get to grips with the small boats crisis in the English Channel this year in 2023? 97% of you so far think not. Let me know what you think at gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, let me reintroduce to you my panel this morning. We have political commentator Narinder Kaur, as well as the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Right, let's get stuck into Prince Harry. Prince Harry's book targets William, apparently, in his explosive new book.
Well, he does, and they'll never repair after spare is one of the headlines in the Mirror today, which I think is very good. Of course, there's been hot anticipation for Harry's new book, Spare, in which the front is him looking like a Cro-Magnon man, in my view. And what more does this couple have to do to make themselves relevant? You know?
Now, Narinder,
listen.
Narinder, hang on. At least we found out that Prince Harry can, in fact, read, because he will be reading the audiobook version. Which is fantastic. Which is fantastic news, Narinder, for fans of Prince Harry, which you are one of.
I'm a huge fan of Harry and Meghan. Listen, if someone's done you wrong, really badly wrong, and fed you to the wolves, why shouldn't they speak their story?
Hang on, that's what she said.
Yes, but why shouldn't Harry tell his story? Why? He's been thrown out of that family. Yes, he wanted to move in. He had no choice. He had no choice. He should tell his story, and I, for one, want to hear the story.
Narinder.
William has not been nice to his brother.
Narinder, let me explain why I don't think he should be telling his story, because he is making huge amounts of money, is he not, Claire?
But not from taxpayers.
Off using his connection with the royal family, whom he says he can't stand, essentially. That's what he's saying, reading between the lines, that he doesn't want to be part of that family. Yet he's making huge amounts of money off the back of it.
Yes. Is he using taxpayers' money?
Stinks.
Is he using taxpayers'
Hang on, Narinder. It's not progressive, is it? It's not progressive.
It is about that. He's making his own money. He's making his own way in the world.
Hang on, Narinder.
The point is,
he's not making his own way.
Quite openly, he can't stand them. He wants to leave. Great. Leave if that's what you want. I feel sorry for you. I was such a fan of you. I thought you were a great guy until you got married to a woman.
What's wrong with Meghan?
That's another story.
Okay.
However, it's not about the taxpayers funding this. If they wanted nothing to do with the royal family, well, they've got a really funny way of showing it, because they're making millions out of the royal family.
He needs security. They need to make money.
Hang on. One thing about Meghan, which I think shows her personality, is the wedding invite list. Remember that? Only her mother from her side of the family was invited. But so many celebrities. I remember there were reports that Reese Witherspoon turned down the invitation because she'd never met them.
Yeah. Anyway, separate the narcissism to the racism. Separate both issues. And she's experienced massive amounts of racism. You cannot deny it.
From social media trolls, granted, yes.
Narinder, can I just say that the royal family have done everything. The firm did everything possible to make her welcome and open.
No, they did not.
They did. And I have in very good authority that she was not an easy character for them to manage and deal with.
Either was Kate Middleton.
And for her to sit there and do that very faux curtsy on the Netflix documentary, it almost made me feel sick. It was disgusting.
Now, the story we're meant to be discussing is not just this book, but also that he's going to do an explosive Oprah-style interview this Sunday, again, for an American audience. All of this is for his new home. He really has just stuck the two fingers up to Britain.
He's had to do that. They need to make money. He needs security. Security was denied to him. He's allowed to tell his story. He's been so hurt. Exactly what happened with Diana has happened to his wife. He's made the comparisons. They felt hurt, and he's allowed to write his story and tell his story. There's nothing wrong with that. I support Harry and Meghan. I feel dreadfully sorry. Who do William and Kate think they are? Kate and William were just so jealous of the attention Harry and Meghan got.
Kate Middleton has not put one single foot wrong.
She also doesn't do anything right either. You know, she did the least royal engagements this year.
Not the least.
One of the least royal
She's got
engagements.
3 young children.
Oh, she's got enough help. And she's not the most friendliest to Meghan.
Hey, Narinder, if you're seeking to defend Meghan, why do you have to then slag off
Kate
to do so?
No, I didn't want to do that, but I do think that the whole problem was William and Kate were jealous of Harry and
I
Meghan
doubt that very
and the
much.
attention they got. I think they were very jealous, and I think that's all it was.
Well, maybe. We never know.
Meghan would have been a great asset to this country, a great asset. She was a woman of
She
colour.
didn't want to be an asset. Meghan Markle did not want to turn up in Wigan on a bleak, damp Saturday afternoon and open up a hospital or a school.
Either does it.
She
either
did
does
not
Kate
want
Middleton,
that.
by the looks of it, with her royal engagement. She's done one of the least amounts as Kate Middleton.
Well, you know what? When you join the royal family, you have to be a person who puts duty
before
everything.
But
And
that's where Harry went
that's
wrong.
why it doesn't suit someone like Meghan Markle
But Harry
and Prince
should have thought
Harry,
of that then.
because they put themselves first, and that is completely not what you can do
fought for this
if
country.
you join.
He's done 10 years' service.
Yes,
Harry's
which makes
Anyway,
amazing.
Narinder, I've got to give Claire the last word.
Which makes it even sadder, the fact that he's done this now, that he's so under the cosh from his wife that he can't even think for himself now.
I'd say he's telling the
And I'll
truth.
tell you now, they've done this Anderson Cooper interview because the stats and the popularity in America has gone down. So then the PR teams have got together, how can we boost this? The only way to boost it, the way to boost things is get the red tops.
That Netflix series was the most watched in
Narinder,
history.
you can't interrupt when she was in full flow. I was interested to know.
So all the red tops, all the tabloid journalisms make or break people. That's unfortunate. That's what it's like in this country. America's slightly different because, unlike Harry, some of them can't read. However, I would say that the opening of this book would be an absolute shocker to the Waleses, and I feel really sorry for them because they have not put a foot wrong at all.
Right, that is all we've got time for this side of the break. But after the break, our man in the southwest, Jeff Moody, brings you the latest on crippling rail strikes that are set to start tomorrow. We'll also be discussing why more Brits are taking to DIY medical care at home as the struggle to see GPs continues. That's after your morning news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you. It's 11:32. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Health bosses are calling for the government to declare a major incident within the NHS over mounting pressure on the system. The Society for Acute Medicine has called the current situation urgent, whilst NHS providers says the service is under equivalent levels of pressure as during the early stages of the COVID pandemic. It follows the Royal College of Emergency Medicine saying as many as 500 people could be dying each week because of delays to critical care. The government says it's recognised the pressures faced by the NHS. UK and French authorities have started patrolling beaches together for the first time in a bid to stop migrants crossing the English Channel. The joint patrols are believed to have taken place in France just before Christmas after months of talks between the two countries. Former Border Force boss Tony Smith told GB News the government needs to introduce a detention and fast-track removal process to get a grip on the small boats crisis. It's after almost 46,000 people were recorded crossing the Channel to the UK last year. Marvel actor Jeremy Renner is reportedly in a critical but stable condition following a weather-related incident. A spokesperson says the 51-year-old, well known for playing Hawkeye, was airlifted to hospital after the accident, which occurred while he was ploughing snow. The two-time Oscar nominee is reportedly receiving excellent care. It comes as dozens of people have been killed across the US amid heavy winds and snow. And a steady stream of people have filed into St Peter's Basilica to pay their respects to Pope Benedict XVI, who died on Saturday, aged 95. The body will lie in state for 3 days before the funeral on Thursday, which the Vatican says will be a simple ceremony in keeping with the former Pope's wishes. He became the first pontiff to resign in 600 years in 2013. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Right, it is 11:36, going on 37 o'clock in the morning. This is Bev Turner Today on GB News with me, Emily Carver. Now, you've been sending in your views, which, of course, are the most important thing of the show. We were running a poll asking you if you have confidence that the government can get to grips with the small boats crisis in the English Channel this year, 2023. That's, of course, after about 45,000, 46,000 crossings were made last year alone, and some predictions are that there could be up to 100,000 next year, which would be political suicide, I think, for the Conservatives. Anyway, Howard says, I don't believe the immigration crisis will ever be sorted until all MPs unite together to make some decent legislation. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, particularly as every time the Conservatives try to do something, there is such tremendous backlash from across the House and, of course, also from then the House of Lords and legal challenges, campaign groups, etc., etc., etc. There does need to be some cross-party consensus. Whether that can be reached, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not too sure. Julia says there is no way we can stop these boat people from coming here until we turn them back. Government must do this and fast-track sending back those already here. Our country needs the money we are wasting on keeping these unlawful people here. Yes, it is millions of pounds a year and millions of pounds a day and billions of pounds a year putting up people in hotels. I'm sure there's many hotels near where you are. They are across the country. But first, we're going to discuss that further with our panel, actually, but train passengers are facing fresh travel disruption from tomorrow as tens of thousands of rail workers down tools in a row over pay, jobs and conditions. Members of the RMT union at Network Rail and 14 train operators will stage 2 48-hour walkouts from Tuesday and Friday, while drivers in the ASLEF union will strike on Thursday. The strikes this week will cripple the network, there's a fly there, and cause problems for commuters as they head back to work after the break, our man in the southwest, Jeff Moody, is in Barnstaple in Devon, where residents and businesses will be cut off completely with no trains running at all. Jeff, the trains were perfect this morning when no one's using them.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the whole point. It's been perfect at the moment, but when everyone goes back to work tomorrow, a different story. It was bad enough, wasn't it, getting home for Christmas, but when everybody goes back to work tomorrow, again, more strikes. As you said, the RMT are calling 2 48-hour strikes, the first one tomorrow and the next one on Friday. And then in the middle of that, on Thursday, we've got the train drivers union, ASLEF, calling a strike too. So another week of chaos. With the RMT strikes, they're expecting services to run to about 20% normal. So there will be some trains in places, but only from 7:30 in the morning till around 6:30 p.m. But as you said, here in Barnstaple, no trains at all. There are several stations around that are in a similar predicament, which in effect means that North Devon will be completely cut off. If you rely on the rail to get to work or to get to about, you're going to be in trouble. You'll have to go all the way down to Exeter in order to get a train to London. Well, let's see what the key players have had to say about this. Well, first of all, the rail delivery group has commented. They said no one wants these strikes to go ahead and we can only apologise to passengers. ASLEF has said we don't want to go on strike, but the companies have pushed us into this place. Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT, has said that he is willing to talk, he is willing to accept an offer, but before he can take an offer to his members, there needs to be an offer on the table. He's waiting for that offer to arrive. And finally, the Department of Transport is saying passengers have rightly had enough of rail strikes and want the disruption to end. Well, there's no sign of the disruption ending anytime soon, sadly.
Jeff, have you managed to speak to any locals down there, how this is going to impact them on their commute or how it's affecting their businesses?
Yes, and I think it's going to affect people greatly. A lot of people here in Barnstaple work outside of the town. They rely on this train service to get to work. Many of them work on the other side of Exmoor, for example, or a little bit further south, and they're finding that they're really going to be stuck. It's going to send a lot more traffic onto the roads, and there are a lot of problems with the roads down here at the moment anyway. Lots of road works on the North Devon bypass, so a lot of people are going to be forced back onto the roads tomorrow, and a lot of people are saying, well, you know, they're going to wait and stay at home a little bit longer, try to work at home when they can. But it's not good, especially for people that are delivering goods, that people that really need to get to places urgently. It's going to cause, again, a lot of disruption. But as I said before, there's still a significant amount of support for the RMT and for ASLEF at the moment, but that support's certainly beginning to wane as time goes on.
I mean, I just worry about the economic damage of all this. I mean, people staying at home for even longer. They've had the festive period, the New Year off, and then still they can't get into work. I mean, I don't know what it does for productivity. Anyway, thank you very much. That was our GB News Southwest reporter, Jeff Moody there, bringing us up to date. Now, I am pleased to be joined for the final time this morning by political commentator Narinder Kaur and the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Now, we're going to start with a rather bizarre story, but it's one that's worth flagging, I think. The Church of England has its first openly non-binary priest. Bingo Allison, I'm not sure if that was her born name, 36, her Christian name, is genderqueer and says God guided them to come out.
Good morning and welcome to the Church of St Margaret of Antioch in Toxteth. And today is Transgender Day of Visibility. My name is Reverend Bingo Allison and I am a non-binary transgender priest in the Church of England. As part of our commemoration of Transgender Day of Visibility, we have a morning prayer service that we're going to read now. Most of the liturgy is either directly quoted from scripture or is written by myself.
Claire Muldoon, is this progress?
No, it's not at all. It's actually regression in my view. And an interesting lexical choice there when you said it's a story worth flagging. Have we not had enough of flags in this country, of everything being throttled down our throats, and given the fact that the Church of England now, in my view, has lost the plot? I think that this is a serious, serious issue here. We've got a serious issue of trans rights, women's rights, human rights. No one's denying anyone any rights. We've got Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon has said that between the ages of 16 and above, you can actually self-identify in your own gender. I think the whole gender critical movement, the whole gender review movement, the whole gender identity movement in this country has lost any sense of normality or reason. And it's terribly difficult to have some reasoned debate on this issue because people are so worked up about it on either side. Now, Reverend Bingo Allison, I'm sorry, but in Toxteth, when you had the Liverpool riots years and years ago, why are they not out rioting now? I mean, I'm not minimising anything, and neither am I making this a focal issue. However, the Church of England, I think, are trying to be so ecumenical, so encompassing, so open and honest, and everyone is welcome. Yes, everyone should be welcome, but there are parameters within that state. And when it's a state, when it's a religious state, when the king is now the head of the church, why doesn't he have a say on what's happening? Because I think this is quite an intrinsic issue, and I think this is opening the floodgates, and I think it's a very dangerous precedence to set.
Narinder, the church is often accused of being too woke.
It's not woke
and
enough.
losing its congregations as a result.
The recent census report showed that 70% only identify as being Christian because it's not inclusive enough. I'm all for Bingo Allison. And do you know that the youth Generation X and Z, a third now identify as non-binary. We need to be more inclusive to the younger generation.
Well, hang on, I think that's
and Claire,
a problem.
as a woman to 4 young adults, I would have thought you would have been more inclusive to all of this. As long as he's teaching the word of God, she is teaching the word of God. What's wrong with what he is?
Hang on, Narinder,
teaching the word of God.
Did you just say a third of children are now non-binary?
A recent survey by Stonewall found that more than a quarter of younger people now identify as non-binary.
I think there's a lot of social contagion to this. It's something that people like Helen Joyce have talked about, how it's become, the latest fad. Would you agree?
I do agree. And it's, Stonewall, I don't think, in my opinion, should actually be given any credence in any argument at all, because they have been shown to be completely dysfunctional. They've been completely immoral. They've got no moral compass, and they've not protected those rights that they were set up to work through, and that was the rights of the young homosexuals and lesbians in this country. They have gone completely the other way, and it's worth mentioning companies like Starbucks as well, with their mermaid biscuits. Trans issues, are an issue, but they should be an issue for adults. They should not. My concern is, as a mother of 4 children, is the fact that the Tavistock Centre allowed hormone blockers to be prescribed to children from the age of 10, 12 in some cases.
Surely the answer should be...
I called it out in 2019 and before, and now that centre has been shut down for a very, very good reason.
But we're talking about the Church of England. The Church, when did they make women priests? They're so backward. Women were only allowed to become priests, 20 years ago?
Hang on, would you say the same to...
You cannot leave...
And gays, look how you're weaponising hostility towards trans. That's what I feel is going on here. You're weaponising hostility towards trans. He's doing a good thing. He's not doing a bad thing.
Hang on, Narinder.
He's spreading the word of God.
Now, this individual is clearly a quirky person, let's say.
A priest.
And would you say the same? Would you attack Muslim congregations in the same way for being backward? Hindu?
I do. Yes, we do. I actually do. I do say that. You said that. I would attack my own religion, Sikhism, but we actually allow women to sit behind our book. The Church of England only allowed women priests. I don't know that date, but it wasn't long ago. My friend is Christian. She lives in Newcastle, and she tells me time and time again, she goes to the church, she has to change churches because they're not inclusive enough. They're middle class.
I'll tell you,
middle class, and they don't include everyone.
The thing about Christianity is, It's not a buffet of religion. You cannot go to the buffet, the table of what you're meant to believe and what you've been brought up on, and pick and choose the bits that you want to have. I'm a practising Catholic, and I believe that I'll try to be as best I possibly can as a Catholic, first and foremost. It's my faith, and then it's my family.
And you show compassion to others.
And kindness. But at the start of what I'd said, Miranda, I did say that equal rights in terms of trans rights, human rights, women's rights, we're all equal.
Narinda, I worry that sometimes we have too much of this faux kindness and that actually we're not helping the children who are obviously going through a lot of changes, puberty. I remember as a young woman myself, a young girl, I didn't really want to grow up. I wasn't comfortable becoming a woman. A lot of girls go through this. And now trans, the non-binary thing, is what eating disorders used to be for a lot of girls.
I'd say it's a choice. I wouldn't say it's eating. I'd say it's a choice. It's giving children
But I don't think you can make that
outlet.
choice at 14, 15.
I don't think so either.
Before that, the reality is children aged 2, 3, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a dinosaur, I want to be a fairy.
Yeah.
You have got quite an effeminate young lad, and then if he was put through the route of the trans route that we are so keen
one's forcing it.
We're so keen to adopt, we're so keen to nourish, it could actually be prejudicial because it could actually
It's such a micro minority. Why is everyone
you
so
said a
scared?
quarter. You said about a quarter of young people are now non-binary. So
yeah,
what
a
is
recent
it?
study found that a quarter of younger people now identify as LGBTQT. Yeah, that's what they. Because we're older people. The youth want to see inclusivity, and we're not including people.
No, I think
the world has changed. Accept it.
No, people have not changed.
The world has changed.
People are the same. The culture has changed, and I would say there's been a lot of indoctrination, and some of our curriculum in schools is also to blame because it seems to embrace all of this gender ideology stuff, which I think just confuses young people. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
It does.
We are moving on to something more practical.
What?
But also rather, well, terrifying perhaps. DIY medical care. Almost 1 in 4 people have bought medicine online or at a pharmacy to treat their illness after failing to see a GP face-to-face, according to a UK survey. I mean, I've been doing this for forever.
Well, Dr. Google is now the new thing, isn't it? It's the new not going out to see your GP. And yet you say the NHS is under-resourced, under whatever, there's waiting times, and yet 1 in 4. Where do they get these samples from? Where do they get the polls from, right? I don't think we should necessarily trust every single poll.
Yeah.
However, I know as a mother that a lot of my girls do look up online. I'm guilty of it myself. What do you think this may be? But I don't think it's helpful at all when you actually present in front of a medical person, a medical professional, to say, look, I've got that, that and that. Because the medical professional, as we've discussed earlier, are so under the cosh, they're under pressure, they're not happy, they're working really, really hard. What's the path of least resistance?
I think Google is fantastic to self-diagnose.
Resistance. I'm presented with these symptoms. Yeah, that's it. I will see it. And a lot of online telephone GP appointments as well. You will give your symptoms. And I'm sure a lot of doctors and GPs will actually use Google as well. And
they do, exactly.
But this has been something that's been going on for a long time.
The problem is then, the extension of that is that we then self-prescribe, which is really dangerous because we don't know the effects of the drugs and we don't know the efficacy of where we're actually getting the drugs from. Is it safe?
Well, they're not safe, but then what can you do when you can't see a GP? I can't see a GP. I'm using Google. And
I shouldn't be.
Yeah, but no, actually, Google can help because sometimes when I finally get to see a doctor, guess what? I sit there and actually they don't always know everything. And I say, well, actually, I Googled this and this happened. And then they think, actually, she's got a point there. So I think Google is a fantastic source too. But self-diagnosing and then self-prescribing, I self-prescribe sometimes. I do. I think, OK, I better order that. I do.
I
can't see a doctor. What can I do?
Sometimes, there's a good case study then, because sometimes you do have to spell it out for your GP.
That's it.
You have to tell them what's wrong with you in order to get the result you want. And people do know their own bodies.
You're seeing them anyway to spell out what's wrong with you. That's what you're doing.
But I mean, sometimes, you need to push, do you not?
in terms of referrals to hospitals that you want to do because you've self-diagnosed yourself.
Well, that way, but
of
also,
having
you know,
got.
if you need the antibiotics because you've got bronchitis and they say, oh, well, just, you know, rest.
A doctor isn't God.
You know.
A doctor isn't God. They don't know everything. I've got friends who are doctors, and you go to the doctor and they've seen so many patients, their minds, and you actually do have to spell it out sometimes and say, actually, that hasn't happened, this happened, and this, I think, may be wrong with me. And then they have a think about that. You've got to help them.
This worries you.
It does concern me greatly. My brother-in-law is a retired now GP, and I can tell you now, GPs are under so much stress and pressure, and they're not recruiting enough GPs. Because we've not got enough GPs to see the patients that we've got. People can blame it on the pandemic, people can blame it on whatever, but the bottom line is, who cares for the carers? That's the old adage. And we can sit here, we can pontificate, we can give our views about the state of the NHS. The reality was, during the lockdown, we were out there clapping our hands for them. We have the NHS as this sacred cow. Well, it's not. It's not fit for purpose and it's on its knees. Something has to be done. And self-diagnosing on Google is not helping anything.
And the proof is that, I imagine, you know, for all the talk of no privatisation of the NHS, we don't want that, we don't want that.
No, of course not.
What are doctors doing? They're voting with their feet and either moving abroad to different systems or doing private work, aren't they?
But they're getting paid more. It's just about pay, and they need to recruit. We're not getting enough young people wanting to be doctors because the pay is just rubbish. They're going into finance. So it is just about money.
Be an influencer because they don't value the vocation.
You either throw money at it or you throw people at it.
This society today, we're far too inclusive for a start. We're trying to make everybody feel as if they are the best thing since sliced bread, when in reality, life is tough.
Well, let's not include people and let's not
there we go. As we go into 2023, life is tough.
Yes.
Is the message from Claire. It is. And sometimes it's boring. Anyway, we're going to reveal
but it makes you stronger.
the final results of our poll today, which asked you, do you have confidence that the government will get to grips with the small boats crisis in the English Channel this year being 2023? Now, with 5,000 votes, 97% don't have any faith. Well, there you go. That is the headline figure there. And I'm not surprised, to be honest, because you've been getting in touch all morning saying that you have no confidence, that the government needs to change tack, that they've been saying time and time again they're going to get to grips with this. Some of you don't think it's necessarily the fault of the government, but it's the fault of our system in general. The courts, the activists, the House of Lords even, the opposition. It does seem that if something doesn't change, this year at least, it is pretty much political suicide for the government. That's if the NHS crisis, the cost of living crisis and everything else doesn't get them before this anyway. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in to Bev Turner today with me, Emily Carver. I believe Bev will be back on the show tomorrow morning to present her own show. But for now, let's say goodbye.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry and settled, albeit with a few showers in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Some showers will affect the far north and west of Scotland this afternoon, falling as snow over the hills. The rest of the country looks mainly dry with plenty of sunshine. It will be a dry afternoon across Northern Ireland. There will be a bit of a breeze blowing, although plenty of sunshine's expected too. Across the northwest of England, there'll be some patchy cloud, but most places will stay dry and there'll be some sunshine at times. An isolated shower cannot be entirely ruled out across North Wales, although the majority of the country will be set fair. However, despite the sunny spells, it will be a colder day than on Sunday. It will feel colder than of late across the East Midlands as well. There'll be a fair amount of sunshine here, although temperatures will only reach 7 or 8 Celsius. The fine weather will extend across into East Anglia as well. It will be dry. There'll be lots of sunny spells and just a gentle west to northwesterly breeze. The wind should be less of a feature across the southern counties of England, with a ridge of high pressure overhead. It should be mostly sunny, albeit quite cool. Heading into the evening, and the odd shower will continue in the far north, but elsewhere it looks dry with clear periods and dipping temperatures. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.